Just letting everyone in the call know that the session is being recorded. So if anyone has a problem with that, the camera here is mostly our candidates. Nobody in the audience here is visible. Anyone that's online, I just ask that you keep your mic muted, keep your camera off if you're not one of the candidates. The only candidate online is Giza, because they are not within the state. For those that have been through these debates before, bear with me. I'm just going to go through a little bit of boilerplate here. MNFurs is a 501c3 nonprofit, and we require a board of directors to remain operational. Currently, our candidates before us is Ali Coyote, Carmabella, Dirge, and online is Giza. So the Q&A session estimated to take about 2 hours long. We'll take about a 15-minute break, about the 1 hour mark. Since this is an open meeting, we ask that all viewers keep themselves muted during the session and quiet in the audience within the room. Those creating a disturbance that interferes with the meeting will be muted by the presenter. Those in the room will be asked to be quiet, and second asked they'll be asked to leave the room. The format of this is I don't remember what slides I had up here. So the format of this is there's going to be a few questions here. One of our candidates asked if the questions from this session will be similar to questions asked in previous years. The answer is yes. So if you watch some of the online content, more or less, it'll be the same questions. The questions will be about 15 to 20 questions that are about 2 minutes per candidate. The candidates will not be allowed to go over their time limit more than 10 seconds. Note that if a candidate repeatedly interrupts another candidate during their time response, the offender could be penalized with a shorter response time for subsequent questions. Continued interruptions could escalate to more severe penalties, up to and including removal from the room during fellow candidate responses. It's never been a problem in the past, and I trust it won't be a problem for our candidates today, but just stating what needs to be said. The community that is here attending is welcome to submit questions to ask to our candidates. Those questions may be submitted by email to elections@mnfurs.org. They will be reviewed during our break session and will be asked towards the end.
Do we have a timer that we can reference to
Yes.
give us a count? Okay.
I'll be using my cell phone, and I will be trying to show you.
Okay.
You guys are getting close. I just ask any questions that are submitted from the community. This remains professional and relevant. No negative questions. As decided by the committee, some questions that are deemed inappropriate will not be included. That's it. This is, as I mentioned before, being recorded. For those that couldn't come or want to watch it again, can do so online. It'll be on YouTube, usually within a few days after this, so you can watch it again there. Share it with your friends in the community. We already introduced the candidates here. Going around the room is the packet with the candidates' bios, some questions that they had answered earlier. Usually those would be online by now, but have not been posted online, but will be shortly. If you have the packet and you've already reviewed it, feel free to just put it on a table somewhere so someone else can grab it and review it as they seem fit. You're also encouraged to meet your candidates. All of our candidates today are members of our community. The questions don't have to stop today. Feel free to talk to them online during the break, after, at our meets. I know many of you come to our meets and many of you staff at our convention. So feel free to reach out. Contact info, I'm sure, will be on with the bios when those get released. Sorry, there's a lot of stuff to go over. Voting is open to members of the community or MNFurs members. Voting rights are granted to those volunteers that have 20 hours or more. Voting, as previous years, will be conducted online via vote.mnfurs.org. It is not live yet, but will start on November 16th. The time is still yet to be determined, but I think somewhere I put 12 noon as our target was when it will go live. Those that want to vote can request a voting code via elections@mnfurs.org. It's pretty straightforward and everything. Instructions will be online for that as well. Does anyone have any questions about voting? Our candidates also will get voting codes if you meet the criteria for 20 hours or more. The results of the voting will be released within 48 hours after the voting closes, which will be at 11:59 Central Standard on the 1st of December. I think that's it. Any questions from anyone? Cool. So the format of this will be based. Oh, sorry.
I'm guessing there might be a question for you to start voting.
What was that?
Would there be a question before you start voting?
So for those that want to vote, voting members of MNFurs or anyone with 20 hours or more of volunteer time. So if somebody has 20 hours or more and wants to vote, they'll email elections@MNFurs.org and request a ballot. They'll be given the voter code for our ballot online. When they go to the website, they'll be asked for their voter code. So randoms can't go in there and vote, and people can't stack the votes in any way either. The voting system was written by our community members within our community and has been determined to be safe and secure, and there shouldn't be any fraud. It's a lengthy process, and I won't subject anyone to that now, but if anyone's curious of how voting works on the technical side of just curiosity, talk to me during the break. Yeah. Only those that can vote will be members of the community with 20 hours or more. If you don't have the voter code and you go online, there's no physical way to vote. Due to ADA compliance and other reasons, we do have offline ballots, which will also verify voter eligibility. Details about that can be emailed to elections and asked about that. So we try to be inclusive to everyone, but we know that everyone has a computer or whatnot, so we try to make that available to everyone. Does that answer your question? Okay. Giza, I don't know if you could hear, just for your clarification, the question was, can anyone just go online and vote? Cool. The order of the questions that I'll be asking the candidates will be randomized, so it won't be the same all the time. Giza, you probably won't be able to see my timer, so when you get called on, if you want to just have a phone timer or something for 2 minutes, and I'll be timing it as well, but I can't show you when you get running up on time. So
okay, no problem. I can do that here. Thanks for the heads up.
cool. Great. Let's get my clock here going. Oops. Great. So our first question for the Q&A today is, with other organizations such as GPS, MFF, Anime Twin Cities, and more, how should MNFurs achieve our mission statement and still collaborate with our partners? The order for this question will be Giza, Derj, Karma, and then Ali. Giza, when you're ready, go ahead and begin.
No pressure here. So my perspective is a little different because I'm remote. So I mostly attend furry migration, and that's my main involvement with MNFurs. But you mentioned a couple of other cons like MFF and Anime Twin Cities, which I'm assuming is a con. And I think a good way to increase collaboration would be starting with communication, everything from having people who staff all of those cons. That's one way to get communication going. Another way to kind of foster relationships would be doing dealer table swaps at the conventions, ad book swaps, and just doing anything you can to stay in touch. And I base this on personal experience, and that's my answer.
Great. Derj?
Yeah, so I think we have a really great thing going here with both GPS and Anime Twin Cities, and I'd love to see us continue to foster that relationship and continue to strengthen that connection while also reaching out to other organizations that we might not already have connections with. You know, there's other conventions in Minnesota and the surrounding areas. There's Duluth Con, there is Twin Cities Con. Those are both kind of fan conventions for a more broad audience, but there is a significant furry attendance to them. So reaching out to organizations and conventions like that, I think, could be a valuable thing to do. And yeah, just continue strengthening our connections with our current partners through the exchange of physical assets, the exchange of information, the exchange of ideas, helping them out when they need it, I think is one of the best ways to just continue that connection and grow our connections through them.
Karma?
So the question being, how are we going to continue to achieve our mission statement? Most of our focus should be on education, right? I think that a lot of our collaboration should be focused on that. And a lot of the collaboration between our partners should be more facilitated through the comms and events departments. I think that we're already doing a great job with collaborating with other society, like the Gig Partnership Society, and scheduling around things like MFF, so we don't step on any toes or anything. But it's could always use improvement, and reaching out to people through the comms department, through the events department, making sure that we're not rescheduling anything in the wrong way is going to be really important coming forward.
And Allie.
I think that there's actually a lot of overlap between the fan bases. I know a lot of furries who are anime fans and vice versa. I know that there are a lot of nerds / geeks that are probably also a part of the Geek Partnership Society. I think taking advantage of that would be a fantastic idea. Going around and maybe even creating more volunteer opportunities where we can approach some of the MNFurs members and say, hey, I understand that you're an active member of, say, Anime Twin Cities, or maybe you are in communication with MFF. Would you mind helping be a liaison, or would you mind helping us come to some sort of collaboration? Maybe we run an event together of some sort. Or I know one of the things that we also do is we have MNFurs booths at like Anime Detour, correct? And we always have an open invitation to the Geek Partnership Society at picnics, more collaborations like that.
Great. The second question for today is, we are coming out of COVID, as we are coming out of COVID-19, how do you see MNFurs establish in-person events? I probably didn't really fact check this one since last time, but as we continue to come out of COVID-19, how would you see us reestablishing in-person events? The order for this one will be Dirge, Ali, Karma, and Giza. Dirge, when you're ready.
All right, excuse me. So I think we've been doing a lot towards reestablishing in-person events while also still maintaining safety and the health of our members. And I think the most important thing when it comes to this is just kind of going by the science and going by precedents, what other organizations and other similar groups have been doing in regards to this. And we've seen that a lot of other organizations are dropping their mask mandate, dropping their vaccine checks, and we've been using that as a precedent to come out of this. And I think that's a good way to go with this, and just continuing to monitor the health and safety of the community and listen to them when it comes to what they want to see at events regarding COVID regulations. So, you know, polling them to see whether they think that we should drop our mask mandates, whether we should drop our vaccine checks, that kind of thing. And just going by that and combining that with the science and the precedents of other organizations to try to base our decisions on that. And yeah.
Karma?
Was Ali.
Oh, it was. I'm sorry, I read the wrong order. Dirge, Ali, Karma, Giza. Ali, sorry.
Aside from our regulation that we have for COVID, I do agree with George that we should do our best to kind of keep tabs on other societies, keep tabs on how other people are treating COVID. But for those who are still too nervous about going to events related to COVID, we should have a decent amount of either small events or online events that we can still host through MNFurs, so that way people who are a bit too nervous to go out, maybe due to underlying health conditions, can still participate in MNFurs events and still feel like they're included in the community.
Karma?
I agree with both of their candidates. There's made a very good point about polling the community, making sure that everybody is comfortable. So one of my biggest reasons for coming on board here is I want everybody to be as comfortable and community-based as possible. So the community is the important part. If the community wants more online events, that's cool. If the community wants the mask mandate dropped, that's fine. We need to be asking them.
Giza?
Thank you. So for establishing in-person events, obviously COVID-19 is the big one, but it's not the only, disease that I've been thinking about. And I think going forward, working with health authorities and health professionals to form high-level guidance for health and safety policies at future events would be a really good idea. And I've heard mention of like other cons, what are they doing? And while watching what other events do is okay, just because another con is doing something in a certain way doesn't necessarily mean we should try to reproduce that without careful consideration on our part. And finally, I think it'd be a really good thing if, as guidance is developed for future events, we seek input from the community and see how people feel, because people who are immunocompromised are a thing, and those are our attendees, and I don't want people to feel unsafe at the event. So that's kind of where I'm coming from on this.
What is your understanding of your fiduciary responsibilities if elected to the board? The order of this one will be Ali, Karma, Giza, Dersh.
From what I know, my responsibilities for being a part of the board is to help run MNFurs on an administrative level. What I would plan on doing for something like that would probably be helping with organization. My degree is in industrial engineering. I'm very good at efficiency. I'm very good at streamlining. I'm very good at organization. And I feel like even though it would be a lot of work up front, having all of that right up front in order to have significantly less work down the line is a good forward-thinking way of approaching.
Great. Karma?
So as far as fiduciary responsibilities, sorry. It's not just what we can do for MNFurs, it's also the responsibility of if something does go wrong, it comes down on us. It's taking responsibility for the community. And part of the reason that I want to be a part of the board is so that we can better access the community. So we can facilitate communication with not only the community, not only outside the community, but between board members, between the departments. My thing is really, like, I have a technical background, but my thing is really bringing people together. And facilitating interactions, making sure that everybody is comfortable and secure.
Giza?
Thank you. So fiduciary responsibilities to me means we must act in the best interest of the organization and its members at all times, even ahead of our own personal interests. So examples of like things we should/should not be doing is there should not be any self-dealing. Budgets must be made and followed. If there is an expensive purchase to be made, that should be carefully scrutinized. And actions which can also bring risk to the organization must be carefully scrutinized. And a good example of that would be, say, a multi-year venue contract. That should be reviewed closely, probably by a legal professional, for things that could put the organization in existential risks, cancellation fees, minimum room night guarantees, things of that nature. So that's what fiduciary responsibility means to me.
Great. And Dersh?
All right, well, from a legal standpoint, there's a number of fiduciary responsibilities of a board member. But two that I would like to mention here in particular are the duty of care and the duty of loyalty. The duty of care basically just says that we have to take into consideration all available information and then act on good faith with that information in mind, and consider the information before we make a decision. And the duty of loyalty basically means that we must act in the interest of the organization and the interest of the community before the interest of ourselves. But beyond those two and the other legal responsibilities, we have a responsibility to the community, which means we have a responsibility to listen to them, to know what they want to see, to know what they want to do, to know how they want to see the organization evolve and change and better itself. And we also have a responsibility to conduct ourselves in an appropriate and acceptable manner that paints the organization in a good light and in a manner that shows the fandom in a positive light. And we're the face of the organization at the end of the day. And so it's very important that we put our best face forward when it comes to that.
Great. What are your plans for educating the public on MNFurs from the perspective of our organization existing, what we provide to our community, the general public, etc.? The order for this one will be Giza, Durge, Karma, Ali. Giza?
Thank you. So for educating, let me refer to this question real quick. For educating the public, I'm going to be saying the word communicate a lot because I think communicate is the way to go about doing it. Everything from spreading awareness by doing advertising with and having a presence at other conventions to having a strong online presence, not just our website, but social media as well. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, I guess that seems kind of what the kids are into these days. And I guess the important thing is to get the word out there so that it makes it easier for people to find us, people who may not know the existence of the organization or may not even know the existence of furry. You know, it would be wonderful if someone's doing a Google search for like, you know, funny animals or something, and they come across us and they become a member. Thanks.
Durge?
All right, yeah, kind of going off what Giza said, I think that online presence is a big part of it. The exchange of information in the modern era tends to go through the internet more than it does in real life now. So I think expanding our online presence through other platforms, you know, I'd love to see more content on YouTube. Like Giza said, maybe TikTok or some of the more popular platforms of the modern era would be great. Just educational content, maybe interviews with members of our community where they explain what furry means to them and how they got into it and what they do and what it's all about, and just expanding our online footprint through things like that. And then when it comes to questions in real life, you know, just explain to them what's going on. I've had a number of occasions where somebody comes up to me at a convention or whatever and says, you know, what is this? What's going on here? And I just tell them it's basically like a comic convention, except we create our own path in it. These are not characters that are from a pre-existing work. These are our own creations, a representation of ourselves. And people are really interested in that and often think that's really cool. So I think that's a very positive way to introduce these things to people when it comes to in real life interaction.
Karma?
So educating the public is going to be mostly done through the internet, as Sturge was saying. We need to focus on our website redesign and all of that. But once everything is settled through that, it'll be easier to outreach to people. Not only about our community existing and furries in general, but the kind of charities that we support and what we do for our communities, because I think that it's very important to put an emphasis on the education that we bring.
Ali?
I think one of the best ways that we could potentially advertise who we are, what we do, and what we can do for people is by, I guess I jumped the gun there, advertising what we can do for them. We are MNFurs. We are a safe space for a lot of people, and furries in general are a fantastic way to help people kind of figure out who they are, to help develop an identity. And I think that that is something very strong that furries have that not a lot of other groups have. And I feel like we could absolutely lean into that and tell people like, hey, this is MNFurs. This is a group where you can maybe have some self-expression, where you can make your own perfect image of yourself, where you can kind of look inward and create this persona, which is what you think you are and what you want to be in the future. That's something that a lot of fandoms don't have.
With this new era of inclusion where the old norms and behaviors in society are not acceptable, how are you going to make MNFurs be more inclusive? As an example, how you get more people involved from all walks of life. The order on this one will be Karma, Ali, Derj, Giza.
Okay, so this is one of my biggest tenets here. The inclusion of everybody from all walks of life is very important to me. And I know it's very important to a lot of the community and furries in general. It's really something that we need to take emphasis on. So training staff, for one, to make sure that they know all the inclusivity rules, more or less, so that we're not just making sure that everybody in our community is included, but that we're not coming off as non-inclusive to anyone. So training is a big one. Just talking about it more. Talking about it from within the community and without. In the board of directors, in every department, on the website, on Discord. All of these things are going to be very important going forward, and as they change, because these things are always constantly changing. We need some method of keeping up with them.
Ali?
It's definitely no secret that one of the hardest parts of starting to become an active member of MNFurs is the start. I've heard from so many people how their first event has been them kind of just standing around awkwardly and not knowing anybody, and even some people kind of breaking off in flicks. One of the things that I'd like to focus on, if I were to be elected as a board member, is to focus on a volunteer role of a creator of sorts. Somebody who would walk around at events, look at new faces and go, hi, I don't recognize you. Welcome to MNFurs. Would you like me to show you around? Would you like me to introduce you to some big people? Because I think being able to start off on the right foot and get people to know that we are not just, that we welcome new people, that we try and make sure we can find people where they can fit in, is one of the most important steps. As they always say, you only have one first impression.
Derj?
All right, well, I think kind of springboarding on what the other two said, I think that training is a big part of this. Like, I think a lot of the perceived exclusivity in the community may just be a misunderstanding, and people who are excluded may just not, what am I trying to say? I believe that a lot of the people who may be perceived by others as being exclusive don't know what they're doing. They don't know that they're doing it in the first place. So I think just educating people on how to be inclusive and how to be sensitive to minority groups and listen to them and understand what they are going through and how they want to interact with the community is an important part. And just to keep our finger on the pulse of minority groups and the LGBT community to know what issues they're going through in today's day and age and what things they find important when it comes to their values. And then trying to model our organization to reflect and include them as groups the best we can.
And Giza?
Thank you. One thing I'm thinking that we should have, which I don't think MNFurs does, is an accessibility lead. I've seen other conventions do this where they have an accessibility lead who, if an attendee has an accessibility issue of some kind, they can reach out to that person and that person will help them with any requirements that they have. I'm also thinking partnering with local organizations may help. For example, at Anthrocon every year, Planned Parenthood has a table in the dealer's room for attendees to approach them and ask questions and whatnot. And lastly, I think we're already pretty well covered on this, but I do think having a rigorous code of conduct, which prohibits mistreatment of attendees based on various protected classes, as well as things like gender identity, should absolutely be in place. We should also make it easy to report issues, maybe even having multiple reporting channels, in person, online, so on and so forth, so that if there are concerns, people feel more comfortable coming forward. We don't want to make it arduous for someone who has a concern to have to jump through hoops to report that. We want to make that easy so that problems can be dealt with quickly and effectively.
Nonprofit groups require funds to remain operational. What is your proposal on ways to provide more revenue streams for Minnesota First? The order on this one would be Ali, Giza, Durj, Karma. Ali?
It's not just important to have fundraisers such as a lot of events. It's also important to know how to spend money. Thanks to my background, I do have some experience with budgeting, with risk management, with I'm trying to think of the right term, engineering economics in general. So I think not just worrying about the fundraisers and the events, but also where we put our budget, how we spend our money, and how much of it that we spend. Maybe try to find alternative options that might be better in the long run, something like that. But on top of that, maybe having some, I know that we have our merchandise booth, maybe having those at more events, like perhaps a small merchandise booth at the first props for t-shirts.
Great. Giza?
Thank you. As far as revenue streams, one of the things that was mentioned by the previous person was fundraisers, and I think that's a very good idea. Bowling meets, picnics, things of that nature to try and bring in money for the organization. Another thing I think that might help in the context of the Furry Migration Convention would be upsells for memberships. I think our highest level membership is Super Sponsor. And something that some cons have done is they have a tier above that. I'm just going to say Super Duper Sponsor for lack of a better term, because every con uses a different term. And it's something that sells for something like $500 or $1,000. And surprisingly, there are people who will pay that and they get good benefits in return, and the organization gets a good chunk of money. And finally, I don't think we currently do this in our registration. Something I've seen some cons do is when you go to buy a membership, at the very end, there's a field that says, would you like to donate any extra money? And it's just free form, enter whatever number you want. And Anthrocon gets approximately $5,000 a year just by having that field on the form. It's essentially free money. So those are my ideas on that topic.
Durj?
So a couple ideas on this. I think that what we're doing currently with asking for donations at our events and selling merchandise at our events is great. And we even have the donate button on the website. But what I've not seen is the opportunity to purchase merchandise through our website. And I think having a portal for that where you can go on and purchase merchandise on our website would be great. I think we could get a lot more revenue coming in through that. And another thing is just the diversification of merchandise. This past year at FM, staff got these really cool water bottles with our logo on them. I think that could be a great type of thing to sell, and maybe even coming up with designs created by local artists and collaborating with them. And having that as a selling point, that these aren't just designs from our organization. These are done by local artists who are in our community. And by supporting us, you're also supporting them. I think that could be a really cool opportunity as well. and just trying to come up with more new creative and interesting designs for our merchandise as well. And another thing that I know some others have touched on in the past is the idea of like charity streams, where we do online events and charity streams where people can donate to us, and maybe we do like a game night where all board members gather around and play a certain game, and you could even donate to control certain mechanics, donate $5 to add this, or raise the difficulty level, or whatever. And I think that could also be a great teaching tool in terms of just seeing us outside of this businessy format.
Great. Karma?
So all of the suggestions have been fantastic. Fundraising, community outreach, merchandise, all very important things. One suggestion that I would like to, propose on top of that is some events that have local artists featured. So like a mini dealer's den or artist alley at the Oval, or at that new venue that we've been looking into that has the upstairs. The upstairs could be utilized for something like that. That would be a really great way to not only make money, because we could say, okay, $20 per table or whatever. We could say, or take whatever donation that they want to give in order to participate. But it would be a really great way to give back to the community as well. It's a lot of local artists are dependent upon things like cons in order to make a lot of their money. We could help negate that, with more smaller events that help bring in more steady revenue for them. And it would help us too.
If elected to the board, how do you handle yourself publicly when and if approached by the general public wanting to know more about us? The order for this will be Giza, Derge, Karma, Ali.
Thank you. I'd start by pointing that person to our website. What I usually do, and because I get this a lot, what I usually do is pull up the website on my phone and ask the person to take a picture of my phone so they can go to the website later and browse it at their leisure. Then I just spend a couple of minutes explaining that, we're a group of essentially cartoon animal enthusiasts who celebrate such things with art, literature, and lots of costuming. And if the person is a little interested, I might show them some pictures from other events. I'd probably tell them about some of our charity fundraising that not just MNFurs, but other events as well do, and answer any questions they have.
Derge?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on this earlier, actually, with just explaining to them what furries are. We're a group of people who are interested in cartoon animals, and we create our personas based on ourselves, based on what we want to be, and then perform as them as a form of self-expression. And that really grabs people's attention. It's different, it's interesting. And as Giza said, I think our website is a really invaluable resource. And we've gone a long way to educate parents of youth furries. And we've seen that page getting a lot of traffic recently. So I think pointing them in that direction and letting them just read through it at their own pace and see that we're a 501c3 nonprofit that educates the public, and we have charities that we support, we have a convention, we have all these other things, is a really good way to go about it. And I think it will generate interest and really paint us in a positive light when approached by the public.
Karma?
So I think the most important thing when approached by the general public is enthusiasm. It's not just, yes, we're enthusiasts of cartoon animals and that sort of thing. People's eyes glaze over if you start talking too technical. What you need to do is be excited about it. And that's how you really engage with people, is get them excited about it, or else they're not gonna go to the website. They're not gonna go and look all this stuff up unless they think that it's something fun for them. So what I like to do personally when people approach me about it is ask them about themselves. So what would you like to do? And how does that relate to the community? And I think also focusing on our charity, our education, the things that we do for the community is really important. It's just a good way to bring everybody in and paint ourselves in a positive light, especially to people who have heard of furries, maybe in not the most positive light.
Allie.
I think that it's important to not just emphasize what a furry is, but what a furry does. One of the biggest aspects of being a furry is obviously having a persona. I'm pretty sure everybody here has one. I'd be surprised if not. So I think that's a really good initial talking point. Maybe showing somebody from the general public, hey, this is my character. Her name is Allie Coyote. She's a coyote. I designed her myself. I helped write her down. If you were to be an animal, what would you choose? Like if you were to choose any animal in the world that you want to represent yourself, real or fictional, how would you go about it? Kind of give them some food for thought, give them something to think about, or maybe get them excited about. Like maybe they want to make their own persona, then maybe they want to start looking into the furry group as a result. Kind of get that interest in as simple a way as possible.
Do you delegate? Do you actively do it? How do you delegate tasks outside of the furry community? This one will be Dirge, Allie, Karma, Giza.
All right, so yes, I do delegate at times. I think delegation is an important thing. Obviously, one person cannot run the entire organization. That's impossible. So delegation is necessary, and that's what our staff are here to do. And so to delegate the task to them, it's important to make sure that they are well suited to the task. We don't want to be giving out tasks to people who are not well suited to them. It's not going to be good for anyone. And we can also use delegation as a teaching tool. We can delegate a task to a less experienced staff member and teach them that task, teach them how to do the process. And then they can learn from that. And next time they'll be able to do it on their own. And soon they'll be, running around doing things left and right, no problem. And so it's a very powerful teaching tool as well. And it can also help with burnout. If you have been assigned a huge workload and you are overwhelmed, you can sometimes delegate some of these things out that other people may be able to do who have less to do than you. So yes, I think delegation is very important in our
Allie?
Yes, I do delegate from time to time. One of the things that I think is the most important for how to delegate is make people want to do tasks that they've been assigned. Because anyone can just point and say, hey, do this. And they're not going to be that enthusiastic about it. They're not going to be that interested in it. But if you say, let's say somebody is interested in, I don't know, I'll just give a random example that's not very related. You want somebody to sort a bin by colors. If that's something that they're interested in, somebody who likes organization, maybe approach them first and say, hey, would you maybe be interested in doing this task? Don't make it seem like you're forcing them to do so. Make it seem like they have a choice to do so. Because nobody likes to be told what to do.
Karma?
So based on what they said, another thing is just delegating in a way that makes everybody comfortable and gives the opportunity to teach. Dirge touched on this, but there's as a nonprofit, we're not sustainable unless we are teaching our people as we go. Because there's a very high turnover rate for things like boards and staff, and we need to have fail safes. We need to teach people as we go so that there's not one person who can do this job and only this person can do this job. I do delegate a lot, especially in like my GMing, my guilds, just leisure activities, but it's still a very hierarchical thing. And you have to know not only which people to approach with which tasks, but which people to approach with the menial tasks, the ones that anybody can do and don't need training for, which is something that hasn't been touched on yet. People are not always going to have training. People aren't always going to have the skills, and we need to be able to delegate in a way that spreads the skills around.
And Giza.
Thank you. In the context of, let's say it's a department I'm running in that context, what I usually do is I'll come up with a list of tasks, break down the overall objectives into a list of tasks, and then I'll kind of go down the list of staff members who I should know on some level, and I'll see who I think might be a good fit for a certain task or who I think might be interested and want to pick up a certain task. And I'll start asking, hey, do you think you can do this task? And if not, go on to the next person. In terms of like say resource allocation, like writing schedules for an operations office, I've written my share of schedules over the years, and I have a whole process for that, which involves surveying people and asking like, all right, what events at this con do you want to attend? And then writing schedules around that. And as far as overall task tracking, I'm a firm believer in using the right tool for the job. So I'll often use something like Trello or some similar product, or sometimes even just basic note taking, just to get stuff down and in writing so that we all have a single source of truth and we all know who is working on what. Thank you.
Great. If elected, what are some of your goals that you want to accomplish with the organization over the next 2 years and why? The order for this one will be Ali, Karma, Giza, and Dirge. Ali, when you're ready.
I've stepped on focusing on the inclusivity of new people, trying to get them involved, trying to get them to understand that we're not just a group of cliques, but we are a group that will happily accept them with open arms. However, on the administrative level, I would hope to use my degree in industrial engineering and engineering management in order to help provide some organization, help provide some new training materials, help provide what we find necessary to future-proof the organization as a whole.
Karma?
So I touched on this before, but inclusivity training is a big one for me. The website redesign would be something that I would like to push. Mostly tools that we can reach out with the community. So not just for the organization, but for bringing new people in, bringing new volunteers in, making the organization more sustainable and growing, making sure that everybody is comfortable, everybody feels included. And I think that the main focus for me is going to be on communication. Not just within the board and within the departments, but with the community. Somebody needs to be the person that anybody can come to with problems, with suggestions, questions, comments, concerns, etc. And I think that I would be a good fit for that. That's my goal.
Giza?
Thank you. Two things I would have in mind would, first, I kind of like to do a bit of a retrospective and take a closer look at things that have been done the same way for more than 5 years and make a determination if those functions still need to be performed that same way, if at all. And I have some examples, but they're too long to go into for a 2-minute time slot. The second thing I'd look into doing would be putting out some variation of NPS surveys. NPS stands for Net Promoter Score, and it's an internationally recognized way of measuring sentiment among a group of people. If anyone has ever gotten a survey from a business that says, how likely are you to recommend us, 0 to 10, that's NPS. And not so much attendee facing, but I was actually thinking about doing this internally facing to kind of take the temperature of the staff as a whole, see how people are doing and see how people are feeling. This would give us the opportunity to spot small problems and deal with them early on before they become larger challenges. And I'm thinking of a particular situation at a Conai staff where we learned about something and it had been something that had been happening for several years and it caught us by surprise and it was a huge mess that we had to deal with. And regularly taking the temperature of the staff and asking for feedback, like, is there anything that prevents you from doing your job, in the form of a survey? I think that could help us identify small problems before they become much bigger problems. Thank you.
And Dersh.
So there's a bunch of things. As a couple others have already touched on, I think the web redesign is a big thing. I think that we could really raise our engagement with possibly a more social media focused type design to the site rather than a forum, because I think that especially the younger crowd tends to connect with the social media format more than the forum format. And so I would love to see that modernized and maybe experimented with and tried out to see how that works. And then another thing is I want to be more inclusive as well based on geography. So there's a lot of outlying communities within Minnesota, Duluth being one of the big ones that I have a lot of personal experience with. And we've seen the official formation of the MNFurs chapter. And I think that's been really great for people up there. Self-included, and it's just been very positive. And so I would like to see other communities in outlying more rural areas experimented with as well, try to form new chapters, try to form new meets in these areas and recruit staff in them to be able to handle these events for us. And yeah, I think those are two of my biggest visions.
If elected, what would you do as a board member to explore new partnership avenues and expand MNFurs into new territory? The order will be Dersh, Giza, Karma, Ali.
All right, so I think a big part of expanding our partnership relationships is simply having our board members present at other events in the area and in outlying states. There is leadership in these other states, and by showing up ourselves and interacting with these people and talking with them to try to foster new connections and help them out, maybe they can help us out, just exchange information, maybe share personal physical assets between the organizations could be a great avenue for this. And also just advertising at other conventions in the outlying areas. You know, we have MFF, we have First Square, we have IFC, we have Anthrocon. So to put flyers out there and make sure staff are going around talking to the staff of these other events to just see if they are interested in working with us and try to form new partnerships in that way, I think is a very powerful tool.
Giza?
Thank you. I'm going to kind of sort of repeat an answer of mine from previously. I think interfacing with other conventions would be a great idea. And one way to do this would be through the FCLR, which I believe we as a organization have a presence on. I think also it'd be really worth like encouraging our staff to volunteer and staff other events and invite staff from other events to participate at our convention, either as staff or volunteer. And to give a really good example, I first learned of furry migration some years ago when our con chair Kellick was working for me at AnthroCon, and that was what ultimately nudged me in the direction of coming to furry migration and staffing furry migration. So and my experience with convention staffing over the years is there's a lot of cross-pollination among con staff, and sometimes it just takes a little nudge to get someone to be on board with attending or staffing another con. Thank you.
Karma?
So I agree a lot with what the others said. Word of mouth is really important in a way that I don't think we utilize enough. Having people speak well of us is almost as important as flyers and talking and interacting with other conventions and other communities. Because people are going to cross-pollinate. People are going to go out into where they are, and if they have a positive interaction with us, they're going to give that positive view of us to everyone else in their other communities. Social media is a great way of doing this too. The more that people are talking about us, the more that we're going to have new partnership avenues, the more that people are going to take us seriously at other conventions, the more people are going to want to partner with us actively. So it's not just getting all those tendrils out there, it's making sure that everybody feels good about it. Social media, like I said, is a good way to do that. Word of mouth is a great way to do that. And sharing resources is a great way to do that. So as the other said, there is a lot of cross-pollination between the conventions and things. We need to get more volunteers, first of all, and have those volunteers help out not just with MNFurs, but with other places as well.
Great. Yeah, Allie.
Probably the way that I'd focus on it, us building off of what Karma said about word of mouth, is how to focus on training the members that we currently have, or encouraging them to run more events. I know a lot of people who say that event running seems like a daunting or intimidating task. And I want to be able to break that ice and say, hey, it's actually not that bad. The more events that we have in the public, the more people are going to, the more eyes we're going to catch, the more people are going to ask about us, the more we can spread via word of mouth as a result of that. So I think focusing on getting people to want to run events, so that way we have more events, we have more furries out there in the public who are enjoying themselves, romping around, having fun, and kind of garnishing the attention of people, parents, closet furries, to let them know, like, we're MNFurs. We like to have fun, but we're also a place where you can come and if you want to learn about us.
And I got everyone right.
Okay. So yes.
I re-rolled the order and then like, oh, sorry. We're about at the halfway mark. Oh, perfect. I was gonna say that's the halfway mark. We're gonna take a quick 15-minute break. This is the point where if anyone has any questions for the candidates, to submit them by emailing elections@mnfurs.org. I'll be moderating them during the break. So I encourage you to submit them if you have them, because this is the future of Minnesota Furs. We'll take that 15-minute break, and I'll just knock off any, because we have another set of questions, but I'll knock off every additional question for every public question we get so we can keep this within a reasonable time frame. So 15 minutes, we'll be back here at 2 o'clock Central, 3 o'clock Eastern. First question here is going to be, In October of 2020, MNFurs established a presence on Discord to provide a space for our community. In what other ways would you suggest we take MNFurs to create more of an online experience? The order for this one will be Giza, Karma, Ali, and Derge.
Thank you. In terms of online experiences, I'm thinking back to past cons. We've had online components to our programming. That is stuff that's been streamed online. We also had, I don't know what to call it, but it was a like wall that I think was a link to like VR chat at the last furry migration. I legit don't know what it was called, but there was actually two-way communication between on-site attendees and people who were in VR chat. I thought that was an excellent idea. As far as ways to make it more online, the convention, there could be more cameras from the con live streaming around, maybe live stream like the panel rooms or the zoos. I know in 2021, we had audio but no video, and it would be neat if we could do video of both of the panel rooms and have all the programming go out live. Other than that, streaming on places like Facebook is a possibility. Facebook actually is a pretty good streaming platform. I'm looking to see if streaming was possible on something like TikTok. And if that's not, well, TikTok is very geared towards short form videos. So just posting a bunch of videos during the con might not be a bad idea. Just have a staff member with a cell phone doing that. And that would honestly be pretty low hanging fruit, in my opinion. Thanks.
Karma?
So a lot of it is going to be through the website itself, but social media is a huge untapped thing. We have a newsletter that is in limbo. That would be good. VR chat is a great platform, like not only for the con itself, but for hosting events. We could do online events or meetups or just casual chatting in some kind of room or world for MNFurs. And I think that would be very accessible to a lot of people too, not only for COVID reasons, but for the younger crowd. VR chat's very popular. Another thing is streaming platforms. I know at least a few of our community members are already established streamers. Like, I stream on Twitch, I'm an affiliate, and I love streaming the Minecraft server. So having us reach out to those people in particular would be a good way to sort of advertise MNFurs within it and create a more immersive online experience. Just more things to do online.
Ali?
Karma kind of stole my thunder a bit there, but what I was planning on doing in terms of online experience is, aside from online events, we could have what Giza said, people who would do TikTok, people who would do Twitch streams, people who would do YouTube videos. But why should we just stop at staff members doing that? We could maybe reach out to some of our furry members and say, hey, I know that you do streaming, or I know that you do TikToks. How would you like to create an advertisement for us of some sort? Or how would you like to promote us with one of your videos? Maybe have that count towards volunteering hours if they are to do something like that. Get the community involved. Part of the big boon of furries is we have a lot of artists and we have a lot of creators and content makers on our side and within our group.
Derge?
So kind of going off what other people have already touched on, I think that the website redesign is a big component to this. As I mentioned earlier, I would love to see it expanded to maybe a more social media type format. And of course, we would have to go through some official channels to make sure that that is done right and that it's moderated and it's done in an appropriate manner. But I think that could be a really great tool and something super unique that I don't think any other organization has our own private social media. And so I'd love to see that done. And another thing I would love to see done is expansion of the official chat groups from Discord to include Telegram as well, because I myself personally am guilty of not being on Discord nearly enough. And I think there's probably other people that are in my same boat. And so I think it could really help to give our platform a wider appeal to more people in the community who maybe don't use Discord. And I know there's already a bunch of unofficial Telegram groups for the community. So maybe going through the process to officiate some of those and onboard them in an official capacity could be a good way to go about that. And another way is what, again, people have already touched on this. I think the creation of video content for an educational purpose, like videos specifically about fursuiting or fursuit making or art, drawing, that kind of thing could be really valuable. Those could be posted to our website or our YouTube page or TikTok or wherever, and they could be sponsored by Minnesota Furs. And even people outside Minnesota would find these and then be introduced to our organization through that.
A majority of Minnesota Furs events are established and ran by leadership. What would you do as a board member to help and encourage more community ran events? The order on this one will be Karma, Ali, Derj, Giza.
Okay. So the main thing that is blocking this right now, I feel like, is people are uncomfortable. People are under the impression that running events is going to be hard. It's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be, you know, some sort of official thing that they have to like do paperwork or sign something. It's daunting. So really, the best way to encourage more community-run events is to reach out to the community and give examples. It's to make sure that everybody knows this is how it works, to have an official, like, documentation of how you run an event, so that people are less likely to feel daunted by it.
Sorry, someone was trying the door and I got distracted. Great. Ali?
I would say try to make it as easy as possible to run an event. One of the things that I'm already have planned is that next week on Friday, I'm planning on doing a how to run an event, the event. Kind of just run people through, okay, this is how you can submit an event. This is maybe some of the steps that you have to take beforehand in terms of venue research, that sort of thing. And as a bonus, MNFurs is getting an event out of it because I plan on making it an actual official event that we are going to run, or that I'm going to run in some way, be it a romp or bowling night, or I haven't decided yet. But speaking of which, most of the events that we do are oval meets, romps, bowling nights. I feel like encouraging people to be more creative with the kind of events that they run would be another good way of handling it. What if somebody wants to run a karaoke night? What if somebody wants to do a D&D session? What if somebody wants to, I don't know, do a fursuit part where they get together a bunch of foam swords and people mess around with that, or MNFurs nerd part, you know, stuff like that. I want to encourage people to not just run the usual events, but also run events that they feel passion for and that they might be more interested in running than just, oh, this is a fursuit romp. Oh, this is another fursuit romp. Okay, we have a bowling night. And while those are fun, we should also focus on some other stuff. I think there's a lot of untapped potential there.
Derj?
All right, yeah, I agree with the others. So I think one thing that is inhibiting others from running events currently is they just quite frankly don't know they can. A lot of people, in fact, I talked directly to someone who's like, wait, I can run an event myself. Like, yeah, you can. And I'm in the events department, so I would love to help facilitate the running of more events by community members rather than us. And I think that also, as Alex said, more varied events could be really great. A lot of them do get kind of repetitive. And so to have some more unique and interesting things for people to do, I think could be very valuable. And another thing is to just have more events for specific age groups and expand on our youth program that way and have maybe events for adults only as well. But I think that the most important thing as far as getting more community members to run an event is just to make it known that yes, you can run an event. Here's how you do it. Here's a guide to do it, and we'll help you through the process. And we're currently in the process of doing that and putting forward those structures to aid community members in running events.
And Giza?
Thank you. So, as others have mentioned, running an event can be really intimidating. And what I'm kind of thinking of is what can we as an organization do to remove barriers to that process? So how might we do that in the context of furry migration and other events? Encourage people to volunteer. And once we get them on as volunteers, if they work out, encourage them to staff, because sometimes it just kind of takes a nudge, someone coming to you saying, hey, I think you can do this. In a similar vein of people running their own events, I would encourage that, encourage people to like, hey, if you want to throw a party at your place, cool idea, go for it. Again, sometimes it just takes a nudge. And great example, there's a convention that got started this way. The late great Fur Fright convention came about as a result of pool parties at the con chair's place. And eventually it got more and more attendance and said, we should turn this into a con. And finally, on the educational side of things, some of you might be aware, I happen to run a panel at a bunch of cons, including furry migration, called How to Start a Con, which covers those steps. And we can definitely add to that and make it into maybe something a little more formal to get people down that path of how to start events. Like, here's what it takes. And, here are the resources that you have available, because I do sense a lot of momentum in the MNFurs community. And I think if some event pops up, there's going to be no shortage of people that would want to help out. Thanks.
With the age diversity in Minnesota Furs, how do you plan to engage youth, teens, and adults to become more involved in the community and make a difference? The order for this one is Giza, Derge, Ali, Karma.
Thank you. I know I've been beating this drum a lot, and I'm going to keep beating this drum, and that drum is communication, doing anything we can to get word of the organization out. When it comes to events itself, an interesting aspect about having kids at the events is the parents are also going to be at the events. So we should absolutely, as fellow adults, we should be making friends with the parents, because I've sensed over the years at a lot of cons, sometimes the parent is like, my kid drugged me to this event and I have no idea what's going on here. And I know some cons have a panel called My Kid Dragged Me to This Convention, and it's basically a Q&A for parents. I know we have a Q&A for parents, literally called that. And I think anything else we could do to get the parents engaged would really help, because it's the parents that enable the kids to come to the conventions and events. Maybe talk parents into volunteering. Talking parents into staffing would be absolutely wild. I talked my parents into staffing cons, so I know it's actually possible. So I think engagement early and engagement often and engagement with parents of youth is a great way to go. Thank you.
Derge?
All right, I think on this, a big part of it, as Giza said, is the communication and education components. And I would imagine parents have a feeling of, yeah, my child brought me to this. They're interested in this. I may be uncomfortable with this. And I don't know anything about this organization. And so they may have their guard up. So to get them involved, get them educated, I think is going to be a huge step in the right direction when it comes to that. And again, not to copy what Giza said, but I think that the idea of onboarding parents as staff is a great idea, especially for furry migration, because if they know that there are parents of youth furries that are staff, they're probably going to be much more comfortable bringing their children to it because they have some form of control, some form of input. And so I think that could be very valuable. And just panels, education, resources on our website, which we've gone a long way with recently with the Help My Kid as a Furry page. I think we could expand this to maybe video format, post to social media, expand it that way to just counter disinformation and the sort of mystery of the entire thing, and just educate people to where they feel comfortable getting their kids involved in the organization.
Allie?
I think one good thing that we can do to focus on youth and teens specifically, aside from special events dedicated to mainly them, of course we have a couple of adult staff members there to run it, but I know from my personal high school days and earlier, a lot of these kids are likely ashamed or trying to hide the fact that they are a furry. And I think that if we can kind of approach them from the angle of, you don't have to worry about that. This isn't something that is wrong. This isn't something that you should be ashamed of. We're here for you. We have the safe spot for you. Even if you don't want to talk about it in school, you can be a furry all you want with us. And nobody's going to judge you. In fact, people are going to encourage you to be yourself. And I think that in its own right is something that we can advertise to parents as this is going to help your kid. Like, you know, this is going to help them socialize. This is going to help them break out of their shell. This is going to help them figure out who they are. Because that's a problem that a lot of youth and teens have as they're growing up.
Karma?
So I love everything that's been said so far. And making it very inclusive of youth and teens is great. Including the parents is great. One thing that hasn't been focused on is the adults. So having youth-based events is fantastic. But furries are also an adult community. And we should be catering to both sides. So youth events that are focused on teens and children and the parents are a fantastic idea and should be generally encouraged. We should have some over 21 events too, just, you know, so people can cut loose a little bit. And it would take more planning, more involvement from events, but I think we have that. And I think it would be a good way to kind of separate them, which in a con space, everybody is very together, and that's great. In an event space, it's more catered to the event itself. It's more contextual. So having a place for the teens is going to be really important. Having a place for the adults is going to be really important. So just more events that cater to each group.
Great. How do you handle burnout, and what do you do to help others with burnout? The order for this one is Giza, Derge, Ali, Karma. Is that the same order?
I think it is, but I'll go first if you want me to.
Yeah, Giza, go ahead.
All right. Thank you. So burnout, I know a lot about. I've been there. I find if I'm feeling burned out, I'll kind of see what some of my responsibilities are and what I can take a step back from. And I don't just mean not doing it. I mean, of course, talking with either my peers or leadership above me and say, I have too much on my plate. I think I need to get some things off of my plate. And we arranged to have some things handed off. And a real life example of that was back in 2018 was a factor that had me stepping down from another con's board. I was on Anthrocon's board, and I kind of needed a break from board duties for a while. So, and I was also dealing with some health issues. So I spoke to the con chair and arranged for my various responsibilities to be handed off in an orderly fashion. I was able to depart the board and with no interruption in duties that I had previously been performing. So, and again, it's one of those communication things. If you're struggling, definitely talk about it to someone and see what can be done short-term or long-term to mitigate that. Thank you.
The order will be Karma, Ali, Dirge. Karma?
Okay, I also know a lot about burnout. I've been there, everybody has, I'm sure. Especially in this community where there are a lot of neuroatypicals. There is a big problem with burnout. One of the best things that you can do to combat it is not just because you can't communicate that you need help if you don't recognize that you need help. So introspection is going to be very important. Training on how to recognize burnout is going to be important. Because if you don't realize that you're in the process of burning out, you're going to burn out before you can delegate and hand off tasks. So recognizing when you need a break, recognizing how to take an appropriate break, recognizing, that it's okay to take breaks. All of those are going to be really important things going forward, something that we should probably be training staff on.
Ali?
As the phrase goes, you need to know when to hold them and know when to fold them. I think one of the best ways to handle burnout is to know when you just have to say, I need to step away. Personally, when I deal with burnout, what I like to do is I like to step away, but I like to do something that I like in order to try and keep that productive swing going. Usually for me, it's cooking or sometimes cleaning, sometimes. But trying to transition your kind of productive mood from working on the MNFurs board to doing something that you like, so that way you can come back with a bit of a fresh mind is, I think, a decent way of handling burnout. As for helping others with burnout, if I'm not suffering for burnout and I think that I can handle more, then I will ask if there's anything that I can do to help. And even if what I can do to help is tell them like, hey, why don't we hang out? Why don't we get together? Why don't we just talk for a minute? Get your mind off of work for a little bit. Then sometimes that's just a palate cleanser that somebody with burnout needs. Doing something to get their mind off of it.
Dirge?
All right. Well, I very much agree with Ali on this one. When I've been burnt out in the past, the best thing for me to do is just to take a step back for a couple hours, even maybe, and just do something that I enjoy doing. And that can just refresh me enough to be able to go back and focus on a task and complete that task. Just taking a step back when it is possible. And this also comes back to the delegation that we talked about earlier. If there are others that are able to do the task, it can be delegated out to them as long as they are not suffering from burnout themselves and are willing to work on that task. And as far as helping others, yeah, just hanging out with friends, offering myself up to come and talk to, come hang out with, or just encourage them to use some coping strategies for themselves to take a step back, refresh themselves so they can come back to something, and just help them work through that in their own way to the best of my ability.
What scares you the most about being on the board? The order for this will be Ali, Dirge, Giza, Karma.
Uh, One of the reasons why it took me so long to announce my candidacy for the board, I believe that I was like 2 days before the deadline, maybe 1 day before the deadline, was I was worried about maybe biting off more than I could chew with handling both the event department and the board. I was assured that it likely would not be significantly more than I'm already doing, but I'm kind of worried about that being the nail in my coffin, that being I am trying to take on too much at once. But as I mentioned before in one of the previous questions, one of my goals as a board member is to have a bunch of initial work up front in order to alleviate a large majority of the work in the future for both myself and future board members and future prospective board members as well. It just requires getting that initial push in.
Dirge?
So I think the two things that scare me the most about being on the board are the time commitment. As Ali said, am I biting off more than I can chew? I don't think I am. I do have a fair bit of free time that could be redirected to this more productive, more useful task in my life. And so there is some stress around that, the not knowing, the fear of uncertainty. But I'm willing to face that and willing to take that on. And the other thing is simply the legal responsibility. Being in a position of being legally responsible in case anything goes wrong. And of course, I'll do the best within my power to make sure nothing does go wrong. But there are always factors that are out of my control and out of my realm of knowledge. And so I think those are the two things that probably scare me the most about it.
Giza?
Thank you. Big thing that worries me about being on the board that keeps me awake at night is tunnel vision and becoming set in my ways. And example is having been on Anthrocon's board for some years, I kind of had this view of the furry community. I saw it in a particular way. And when I stepped down from the board, my perspective actually shifted and I kind of noticed things that previously I'd been aware of, but I just hadn't really picked up on, it hadn't really sank in. And that's kind of one of the things that led to me ultimately getting a fursuit, for example. So that's something I would be mindful of. And one of the things I really like about MNFurs, which led me to announce my own candidacy for the board here, is that there are 2-year terms because it gives each person a chance to say, I'm good, thanks, at the end of their term and not run for re-election. And they can do that without any further commitment to the organization. So I really like that aspect. Thank you.
Karma.
So what makes me nervous about being on the board is the fact that I really want to help out in a lot of different ways. And I don't want time constraints to come into it. I don't want to make it seem like a full-time job. But also, I don't want any conflict of interest. Like, I'm an artist in the community, so I can't vote on things like the artist alley or the dealer's den if I am involved in those. I can't vote on things that Allie would be voting on. I can't vote on things that would be the head of, if I were to be the head of the comms department, for example, which I interviewed for recently. I wouldn't be able to vote on anything within that department. And that's the only thing that really makes me nervous, what scares me about it, is not being able to help in all the ways that I can because of restrictions like that.
This is a question submitted by the community. What are ways we can do more events and activities you see that are new that can push our 501c3 mandate as an educational nonprofit? The order for this one will be Karma, Dirge, Giza, Ali.
Okay.
Hopefully that flows okay. I didn't really proofread it or anything. I just threw it in there.
Well, more of it's the focus on education. So one great way of doing that would be like Lisa was talking about earlier, getting the parents of youth in, because like one of our big educational things right now is help my kids furry. Events specifically for that would be a great way to engage and encourage the educational aspect. In addition, our charity partners. Educating people, having things on the website about the charities, about what they represent, how we can help our community, is going to be a really important way of educating not just everybody else, but within our community too. Last thing I want to mention is that with training within the staff, we can help educate our staff in other ways as well. So not just about furries, about charities, about the organization, but in ways that they can help the organization. So Ali, for example, could teach people how to organize better. I could teach people how to, communicate better. People share their skills, and that's another good way of reducing burnout and that sort of thing as well.
Dirge?
So I think this kind of comes back a little bit to some of the stuff I was saying earlier. I would love to see some events and sort of talks almost by specific members of our community with a dedicated skill. For instance, a hands-on fursuit making workshop, I think would be a great idea. And I think there'd be a lot of interest from the community in that, including for myself. I would love to be able to do that. And so to have some events that are hosted by non-staff community members with a given skill where people can attend and have hands-on experience and learning in a particular topic, I think could be great. And also, as Karma said, I think one way we could expand on our current connections as well is to do some charity involved events. I know we work with Save a Fox and a couple of organizations like that. And so to have MNFurs sponsored tours or information exchanges or talks by these organizations, I think could also be a very valuable teaching tool in this way.
Giza?
Thank you. So on the topic of pushing our educational mandate, a couple of things came to mind. First would be picking up additional guests of honor who have an educational background. And a specific example I can think of would be Dr. Wildlife, who was a guest of honor at Furry Migration 2021. They have an educational background, and that was fantastic because they gave a couple of panels where they brought like huge PowerPoint presentations that they'd previously given talks with and just kind of went down, the topic they were talking about. And it was hugely relevant for the con. And those two panels were particularly well attended. So there was attendee interest. Something else we could do on the topic of community outreach would be getting local educators involved. For example, I know bird sanctuaries, they're happy to come to events and, show off their birds and talk about the work that they do. I know zoos have some educational programs. If we want to go out even a little further, since we have a children's track, what if we got an art teacher from a local school or local college to come in and maybe do a 2-hour art class for the children? That would be really neat. And, something that you just really don't see anywhere. And I don't even think I've seen it at another con. So those are some ideas I have.
Ali.
A couple of ideas that I've had which would also branch into inclusivity, would be first thing that came to mind for me was maybe having a panel or a talk of some sort about the cultural significance of some of the animals we've chosen for our persona. For example, one of the main reasons I chose coyote for my persona is that coyotes are in a lot of Native American folklore and Mexican folklore. They are considered to be tricksters. They are considered to be, kind of playful creatures. So maybe having an in-depth event or an in-depth panel talking, not just at our convention, but at some of the other conventions for our partner societies about, okay, so you want to be a furry, or here's how you might go about choosing a persona species. Here is what some of these animals mean in terms of culture. I think it would be interesting to even get people who are ingrained with that culture to talk about some of these animals as well. Maybe if there is somebody in MNFurs who is willing to volunteer that comes from Native American descent, they can talk about coyotes, foxes, some of these other creatures, buffalo, that have such significance rooted in their culture, and what a persona who has that species might mean.
Another question submitted by the community. How do you like to inform the community about our educational mandate? I guess if our candidates feel like this kind of already was addressed by the first question, we can skip it.
Yeah, I'm kind of like, didn't we do that?
Yeah, a lot of your answers kind of do actually.
Yeah, we kind of covered that, I feel like.
Okay. Random noises coming from my computer. How should Minnesota Furs look to give back to its volunteers and staff? What do you think we should look into to do more for them? The order for this one will be Ali, Karma, Derge, Giza.
I'm in a pretty good position given that I'm the head of events as well, where I've actually been talking with Kinger, and one of the things that we were suggesting was that we were talking about having maybe some volunteer exclusive events, some events where Minnesota Furs can give back to people who volunteered for say 10 to 30 hours during a course of a year. Something to make them feel like, yes, we acknowledge that you have helped a lot, and we would like to thank you for that.
Karma?
I love the idea of volunteer-only events. Just any way that we can make them feel appreciated, because people volunteer because they're getting something out of it. Whether that's the joy of helping people or, other personal reasons. It's generally altruistic, but they're still there for a reason. You know what I mean? We can help encourage that with things like rewards. We would have to work very closely with HR on this, so it's not seen as compensation in any way, because that does make them less volunteers and more employees, and that very much gets into gray areas legally. So doing more for them, making sure that they feel appreciated, not just with events, but talking to them one-on-one, somebody being a community liaison so that everybody has their voice heard whenever that there are problems, or if there is anything that they don't like, that can be addressed.
Derge?
All right, kind of going off of what others said, I think the idea of staff-only events is a really great one, or volunteer-only events. If you've had 10 or 20 hours, you can attend this pizza party or this dance or something where we could have a local DJ put on a performance and just have a fun environment with that. And I think another way is just potentially giving them a chance to open something like maybe a sweepstakes. So if you have 20 volunteer hours or something, you can be automatically entered to win some free merch or some a commission or something along those lines that people would be interested in. And another way is just to make sure that we're saying thank you to our staff members. A big thing for me in my personal life is I, about a year ago, had a change of bosses. And it went from a guy who was very flat in his affect, didn't really say thank you, he wasn't emotional in his connection with me, to a guy who is super appreciative, really makes me feel like I'm part of a team and encourages me to do my best. And I've noticed my work drive and my desire to do more in my job has increased drastically. And so I think we need to make sure we really are thanking our staff for their work and making them feel like they're part of a team. And so, yeah, I think those are some great ways to go about it.
And Giza.
So what's one thing that everybody happens to like? And that answer is free stuff. And I'll note that this past year, furry migration had pretty big growth. I think it was from 1,100 to about 1,500, which means we have a much larger budget to work with now. And based on my experience staffing other cons, a lot of cons will give things back to the staff by way of, it could be free membership, free t-shirt from the con. Some cons actually partially or fully pay for hotel rooms for their staff, which may be a financial option worth exploring. Some cons will pick up the entire room. Some cons will pick up part of the room. Some cons will put multiple staff in a room. There's lots of options there, which I don't really want to go down that financial rabbit hole. Another option is, I know we do a pizza party for the staff on Sunday night, but a couple of cons actually do a full-blown like hotel catered banquet dinner for the staff on Sunday night. I'm specifically citing Anthrocon and Midwest Fur Fest. And the way that works is at 7 p.m. or whenever the time is, everything comes to pretty much a stop, and the staff stops what they're doing, and they all go to the ballroom and sit down and have dinner for an hour. And having been through a few of those, I can say that's a great way to just stop working, relax, socialize with other staff, see people that like I've been staffing the con with, but I haven't seen all con because they're like all the way in the art show or something. And it's a great way to bring the staff together in just a relaxed social mood. And it happens at the con when those of us that aren't local are present. Thank you.
If you wanted to have MNFurs staff take one training course, what would it be and how would it benefit the organization? The order for this one will be Giza, Ali, Karma, Dirge.
Ooh, this is a good one. Just off the top of my head, I think a first aid / CPR course would be a really good idea. And not just because of the obvious benefits, but because it could reduce liability to the organization as a whole. If we're able to say, this percentage of staff are trained in first aid and CPR, I could see that being really, really beneficial. Thank you.
Ali?
I definitely agree with the idea of first aid or CPR training. But in the interest of contributing something new, some sort of leadership training, some sort of training that allows people to not just go up to a volunteer or like to a volunteering position and just do what they have to do, but also to take some training where they know how to garner interest in it, where they know how to kind of rally up more people, how to get people to want to volunteer more on top of that in order to kind of help branch out and get more volunteers. Because it seems like MNFurs is never short of needing volunteers.
Karma?
So I think both of those are fantastic ideas. Again, in the interest of volunteering something new, I would say inclusivity training. Because one of my core reasons for being here is to make everybody feel comfortable and safe. What I would suggest is not just inclusivity, but communication training, so that everybody can describe their needs in an efficient and safe way. Inclusivity is really important, of course, because we have a lot of LGBT members, a lot of youth, a lot of people in minority groups that sometimes may feel excluded for some reason. And that's going to be one of the really important things going forward, is making sure that everybody feels welcome.
Dirk?
All right, well, I agree with everyone that went before me. I think these are all great ideas, but yet again, in the interest of contributing something new, I think a business management and structuring course could be really valuable, because I've seen places where there is not communication happening, or the structure of the organization makes it so something falls through the cracks. And I think we could really improve productivity and improve interdepartmental communication by having a course like this, and just make sure that departments are not stepping on each other's toes, and making sure the board isn't stepping on departments' toes when it's not our place to make that decision. And I think this could just help streamline things a lot and make our responses quicker, more efficient, and more productive.
MNFurs can become a second life and a second job. How do you plan to keep yourself active in other things in other communities? What are your hobbies, and what are your hobbies, and can those be separate from MNFurs? The order for this one is Dirge, Giza, Ali, Karma.
All right. Well, I think I have an advantage in this in a way, because due to the nature of my job, I have a considerable amount of downtime, usually at least a couple hours a day at work, where I really have nothing to do. And so I think this would be a very good time to work on board matters and matters related to the organization. You know, set up a mobile hotspot, get online, and work on some stuff. And that makes it so when I come home from work, I don't have to worry about these things as much, and I can do things that I want to do other hobbies that are separate from the organization. And I think this is a really good advantage that I have in this question, in this respect.
Giza?
Thank you. So one big hobby I have is I'm a software engineer, and I like to write a lot of code for fun. So I spend a lot of time writing open source code, which isn't really furry related, but does kind of keep me separated from anything furry related. And as far as furry things that are separate from MNFurs, I happen to staff a few other cons and attend a few other cons. So those are something for me to focus on as well. And it does, at a broad level, it helps me compartmentalize. So, you know, today I'm going to spend some time doing stuff for MNFurs. Tomorrow I'm going to spend something, some time performing staff duties for another convention. Third evening, I'm just going to sit around and write some code. So I try to keep myself involved with different things, be they furry or not, so that any one thing doesn't consume my life.
Ali?
I'll be the first to admit that furries are basically most of the social life I have nowadays. But that being said, I am active in more than one furry community aside from MNFurs. Outside of that, I do like to have hobbies such as the aforementioned cooking, which is more of a personal life one, and as well as celebrating holidays with my family, that sort of thing, in order to help kind of separate my life between MNFurs and my family, although my family all knows that I'm furries at this point. What I usually like to do in order to help separate all of this is I have certain days where I will only explore hobbies outside of MNFurs. I run a tabletop RPG on Wednesdays, and just about everybody that has asked to meet up with me in MNFurs, I've told them the same thing. I don't do Wednesdays. Wednesdays do not work for me. I will likely not get any MNFurs work done on Wednesdays. And on top of that, I also try and keep one day open in the week where I can just take my mind off of MNFurs stuff and just do my own thing, whether it is doing some one-off tabletop, whether it's taking a walk downtown somewhere, whether it's trying out a new dish, or whether it's just kicking back and playing video games. I also find that making friends with people from MNFurs outside of MNFurs is a great way of still being active within the community, however, still having that MNFurs integration and not just having it separated.
Emma?
So I don't work a traditional job. So like Jer said, I have a lot of downtime. I do art, I GM professionally, and I do odd jobs in contracting. So I have a lot of time that needs to be scheduled. And I like having schedules. I like having schedules that help me separate things. So not only am I going to schedule, this is the time that I'm going to work on MNFurs stuff, this is the time that I'm going to stream, this is the time that I'm going to have downtime, this is the time that I'm going to craft. And I think that separating those things in a compartmentalizing way is really important. Another thing is picking up something new. I have unmedicated ADHD, which for anybody who doesn't know, means a lot of jumping around in hobbies. And I love picking up a new art medium or doing something new and novel to sort of hyperfixate on something neat, but still have that schedule so that I get everything done. And I think that helps a lot with not only it becoming a second job, but it helps with burnout and separating these things and also learning. So it's stuff that you can bring to the community as well. Like if I pick up a new skill on this off time while I'm hyperfixating on yarn or something, I can maybe go into MNFurs and teach people with it. So it's bringing back both sides.
I think this is the last question. If you had to come up with a character for Minnesota Furs as a representation, what type of animal would you propose and why? The order for this one will be Karma, Dirge, Giza, Ali.
This is a hard one.
Yeah, are you okay if I take out my phone and look up?
Yeah, that's right.
Have it?
Oh man.
This question was added just to kind of break things up and kind of be a more of a laid back one. There's no right or wrong answer. Neither is any of these questions, but.
Right. I would have to research like Minnesota native animals for one.
Exactly.
To try and find a good fit. For representation, it needs to be something that's open and diverse and enthusiastic. So I don't know, maybe whatever the state bird is. I haven't actually been in Minnesota long, so I have a disadvantage on this question. Something that is really iconic, but also represents our community as a whole. So like a state bird or a state animal or, I don't know, walleyes. Those are popular rights.
They're commonly known fish.
Yeah.
For someone else that has less time in Minnesota, Giza?
I'm just taking a shot in the dark here since this question wasn't even on my radar. I'm not going to lie. But, I was thinking if I had to pick an animal, I'd probably go with a green wolf because wolves are plenty popular and furry. I think we all know that. And the green would kind of go with the color scheme of MNFurs. So we kind of got some branding going on there.
Allie?
If I were not to base it off of specifically a Minnesota native or Minnesota iconic animal, I'd probably try and go with an animal that is has a personality that I think the MNFurs should strive for. And this is probably going to seem very funny, but the first thing that came to mind for me are capybara. Capybara are fairly laid back. They're more than willing to interact with just about any other animal out there. Capybara tend to be very social animals, and as we are a very social group, I think that's fitting. And not to mention, they're just fairly chill, and I feel like as a whole, that's kind of what I get from MNFurs. That's kind of just a very chill community where you can socialize, where you can hang out with people of all sorts of different species and animals, backgrounds. So I'm going to go with capybara.
And Dersh.
All right, I'm going to go super stereotypical on this and say loon. I mean, what is more Minnesota than a loon? Everyone recognizes it. When you see a loon, when you hear the sound, people think Minnesota. It's our state bird. So if we could incorporate some type of branding into that, where, like Giza said, maybe incorporate our characteristic green into their design and have it be the state bird that is so recognizable and so famous for Minnesota, I think that could be a great idea.
With that being said, that concludes the Q&A. Again, I don't want to sound like a broken record by saying this, and I say it every time. I want to thank our candidates for stepping up and putting themselves forward to be considered for the board. It's definitely not an easy job, and as many of you said, it can be a little bit daunting, but for the board to continue, and therefore the con and Midwood to Frolic and literally everything to continue, it's definitely a necessity. Again, this video, for those that want to rewatch it or whatnot, will be available shortly. I recorded it via Google Meet, so it should be ready as soon as I hit stop recording. You guys are welcome to hang out in the room for a bit. We have it until 4. So with that being said, I want to hear a quick round of applause for our candidates for stepping forward. Ali, Karma, Derj, and Giza, thanks for coming. And like I said, feel free to stick around and socialize. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.